All right, guys. So this is my attempt to make my YouTube videos a little bit more professional. We'll see how it goes. I'm excited about it. It's a cool project for me to mess around with technology, which I'm now bad at, but I hope you'll bear with me. And I am really excited about this topic, which is why physical therapy is an enormous waste of time for most people. And you'll see I have some slides, and the point of the slides is really to keep me on track and it's to help give a little bit of structure to my videos. If you've watched my videos in the past, I tend to ramble a little bit when I get passionate about something. So hopefully this will keep things a little bit more straightforward and allow you to get my message a little bit better. Any feedback on this, any feedback on presentation quality, all that stuff, I really, really appreciate. You can leave it all in the comments below. So first thing I want to mention is that this lecture is going to be directed strictly to athletes of any kind, but really strength athletes. And the reason I mention that is because if you stumble upon this video and you are a regular person who works in an office job and your wrist hurts, don't think that I'm saying physical therapy is worthless. Okay. Physical therapy might be very valuable to you. If you're someone who likes to push their body, push the limits of their body, and wants to continue to get bigger, stronger, faster, whatever, continue to improve, especially in spite of injuries, then this lecture is for you. So the number one thing, this drives me nuts, is that physical therapy is centered around the idea of creating a diagnosis for some type of injury, some type of pain, and then prescribing some type of treatment based on that diagnosis. And if you think about the medical field as a whole, it kind of makes sense, right? So let's say that you go to the doctor for strep throat and the doctor swabs your throat and they see, because you go to the doctor because your throat hurts, and the doctor swabs your throat and they're like, they run a culture and they're like, oh, well, you have strep throat. We treat the bacteria that causes strep throat with this drug. They give you the drug, goes away. That's a very straightforward process. And the diagnosis of strep throat was very useful because it tells you what's going on. It tells the doctor what to do. Let's say it's not strep throat. Let's say it's some type of viral infection. The doctor knows, okay, well, we don't have antibiotics that can treat a virus, obviously, but your symptoms seem pretty mild and your body's going to heal itself. So here's how we're going to treat your symptoms. We're going to give you an anti-cough medicine or something for your sore throat or whatever, and you'll wait it out and you'll get better. And again, that's a very useful method of dealing with an issue because it's going to give you a little bit of security around what's happening. And it's very straightforward. It's going to work. Your body is going to heal itself. And that works in the medical field, but you have to understand a physical therapist is not a medical doctor. And I can see that my video here is blocking the screen. Physical therapists are not medical doctors. And the field of physical therapy as a whole, as much as it has tried, this is a historical issue, as much as it has tried to really validate itself, it's essentially pseudoscience. There's not a lot of good information that's going to tell a physical therapist how they can deal with a specific malady. And there's a lot of good reasons for that, that I'm not going to go into them all, but what I am going to discuss is, I can get my presentation to work. When it comes to physical pain, treating the symptoms and even treating the underlying cause might not fix your issues. So let's go back to the analogy talking about strep throat, right? So in that case, we were able to identify a very specific issue, strep throat, that lots of people suffer from, and it has a very straightforward resolution, right? You get antibiotics. So let's say that you have a very common physical issue. Let's say that you have a rotator cuff tear. This diagnosis is nowhere near as useful as the diagnosis of strep throat because not all rotator cuff tears are caused by the same issue. All cases of strep throat are caused by the same bacteria. Not all rotator cuff tears are caused by the same injury, right? And so because the root cause is different, there's no one prescription that a physical therapist or anyone can give you that's going to fix your rotator cuff. However, what that diagnosis does do is really fuck with your head. Now you're thinking, oh, I have a torn rotator cuff. You're going to look up online all the symptoms, all the things you can't do. And it's really going to lock you into this limited mindset that is going to delay your healing process. Now, for the physical therapist, though, hey, I made a diagnosis. I can now bill your insurance. I can prescribe you these corrective exercises, and I did my job. Yay, me. And that, for any serious strength athlete, that is a huge disservice. If you are a normal person and you need to do your office job and you don't want your shoulder to hurt, those corrective exercises will probably help you. We'll get into that in a little bit. Let's say that it's an issue where, hey, there is really no straightforward cause. You have some, we'll use my injury, for example. You have some uncommon injury where your performance is limited. Well, guess what? Unlike with the case of the cold, your body's probably not going to heal itself because your body has a million different ways to move around restrictions, right? So if you can't use your shoulder, well, you're going to compensate by using your elbow or your hip or your neck. And even though that might resolve your pain, in the long run, that's going to limit your performance because you're not using the body in biomechanically optimal positions, right? So instead of actually healing, instead you're building compensations that can then be locked into place physically and mentally and lead to worse problems down the road. So again, physical therapy diagnoses are virtually useless. Now, the second problem with physical therapy, I talked about that corrective exercise, right? Well, let's say you hurt yourself deadlifting 700 pounds. Let's say you hurt your lower back. How in the world do you think doing a bunch of hyperextensions and L-flies is going to prepare you to deadlift 700 pounds again? It's not. The stimulus for recovery needs to be proportionate to the stimulus that actually injured you in the first place, right? If it's not, you're never going to get back to 100%. And I do not know of a single physical therapist that prescribes 700-pound deadlifts, right? That's not their job in their mind. Again, I'm talking to most physical therapists. There are some good ones out there. I know I'm shitting on the industry. I think that's fair. I think 99% of physical therapists give the rest a bad name. You get the idea. Their idea is, hey, if I can alleviate the pain, if I can alleviate the symptoms, you seem to be moving well without load, well, then go load it up yourself. And that's just not how an injury works. Corrective exercise provides almost no stimulus. So what do you actually do? What you have to do is you have to scale, right? So obviously you hurt your back. You can't just go back in the gym and you deadlift 700 pounds, but maybe you can do an unloaded squat, something like that, right? That is something that physical therapists tend to do. It's just they don't scale far enough. They stop too short. So again, just using the case of the back injury, maybe you start with an unweighted body weight squat. Maybe you do start with some other corrective exercises. I'm not saying they're totally worthless. I'm just saying they're overprescribed, and in general, they tend to be used longer than they need to be used. So you start with the body weight squat, and eventually you're able to load this. You're able to do a goblet squat, and eventually you're able to do, let's say, a hip hinge with an unloaded barbell, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's obviously a very straightforward example. And hey, maybe you run into some issues along the way where even you move on to that unloaded hip hinge or the empty barbell, and you still have pain, and then you need to, work on some hamstring issues, stuff like that. Again, a good physical therapist can be useful in those situations. They can help you identify issues that are involved in the scaling process. But if the physical therapist is not knowledgeable enough, and I don't know very many that aren't knowledgeable enough to take you through in the entire scaling process, all the way back to 100% strength, then they're really not doing all that much for you. And they might be beneficial as, an occasional consult if you get stuck, but they're not really going to be your long-term solution. So I Googled a picture of an L-fly, and I got a Google image result that said the bungee L-fly. What are the benefits of this exercise? And I wanted to put this in there because I really think it captures the issue that I'm speaking to, which is there's almost no benefit to these type of exercises, guys. I see people going to the gym and they'll spend a freaking hour doing this stuff before they start doing their main work. And it's a waste of their time. It's a waste of their energy, and it's encouraging them to focus on the wrong things. So what do you do instead, right? This is the big question, because it's easy for me to sit here and say, oh, physical therapy sucks. You shouldn't do corrective exercises, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't help you if it doesn't tell you actually how to fix your issue. So how do you fix your issue? The first thing you got to do is see the bigger picture. And when I say bigger picture, I'm not talking about the proximate cause of the injury, which is what a lot of people think. They're like, well, I hurt my back deadlifting because my left hip is too internally rotated, or because I broke my ankle back in the 5th grade and I've always compensated for it. And they think they're working backward from the the severe injury to find the underlying cause, and they think by addressing that they're really doing something for themselves, and they are. It's better to have that second level approach than to just think, oh, I hurt myself deadlifting, I shouldn't deadlift anymore. But it's generally not enough, because remember what I said again earlier in the lecture, the body is going to find ways to work around limitations, and that's a normal process. You probably do want to resolve those compensations, but you didn't develop the compensations randomly. You developed the compensations for some bigger reason. So the question is, like, what is that bigger reason? Why wasn't your body moving properly in the first place? In some cases, there can be a genetic issue, right? Maybe you have a serious limb length discrepancy. And in those cases, again, probably need a physical therapist, or, you probably need some very unique approach. But in most cases, it's a lot simpler than that. In most cases, it's going to come down to a lack of mindfulness. And what I mean by that is, when you think about our daily lives, most people have very hectic daily lives. They're under a lot of stress, and they're put in a lot of what I'll call unnatural positions. I don't love that term. It's not entirely accurate, but I think it's useful, because if you think in evolutionary terms, people weren't sitting at a desk all day. They weren't staring at a computer screen all day. They weren't staring at their phones all day. They weren't in these kind of hunched over postures, and they were moving in lots and lots of different ways. And we're typically not doing that in our daily lives. Now, a lot of people do, right? The people I'm talking to anyway, a lot of strength athletes, they'll make very intentional decisions to go for 10-minute walks after meals, or to stretch daily and practice their mobility in the gym. And the problem with that is it becomes kind of background noise. It's not mindful. It's a checklist of, hey, did I get my steps in today? Hey, did I warm up before my training session? And that's not good enough. That's actually not doing anything for you, except wasting your time, or maybe burning some calories. You need to be mindful when you're moving of your body's position in space. And in my opinion, the best way to do this is with awareness of your feet, hands, and eyes, which are really your connections to the world. So if you, I'm a big fan of the Headspace meditation app, and they have a walking meditation where, as you're walking, you're just being mindful of the sensation of the ground under your feet. And that is an amazing way to bring you into your body and to help you get an awareness of where the rest of your body is moving through space. You can do the same thing when you're typing on your computer, awareness of your hands, awareness of the feeling of your fingers. And if you're in a situation where you're not really moving, use the eyes. Be aware of, okay, what's going on around me? Typically, that will make you a little bit more aware of what's going on inside you. But it really does come down to an issue of being mindful, building this strong connection with your body, and strong kinesthetic awareness that's going to help you to then take a step back and say, okay, when I'm in the gym, when am I putting myself in positions that don't really make sense? All right. Whether that means that you're going to excessive thoracic flexion when you're performing your deadlift, whether that means that you're favoring one hip of the other when you squat. And again, the solution to these is not corrective exercise. The solution to these is just more mindful movement. Once you become aware of it, assuming that your programming is correct, which many people don't have good programming, but assuming that your programming is correct, over time, your brain will fix these issues. That's just a motor cortex issue. And again, there are types of training that you can do to speed that process up, but it's typically going to have better long-term outcomes when it comes to high levels of performance than doing a bunch of bungee L-flies. And the third thing is to do what you can. And this one is a little bit of a cop-out, but I'm going to say it anyway, because I get so many people that come to me and they say, I don't do deadlifts because I hurt my back XYZ. I don't squat to parallel because ABC. And if you put those limitations around yourself because you had a diagnosis, or just because you've decided it's something you can't do, it's something somebody else has told you, you're never going to get to 100%. Never, ever, 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 ever. But if you work through those, chances are you will. So I think that injuries in particular are a very difficult topic for many people to deal with, because no one likes to be injured. No one likes to be in pain. Pain is one of the most universal forms of suffering. And so that emotional charge to the issue makes it very difficult for people to actually implement these suggestions, which are not quick fixes. I think that's why the physical therapy industry has thrived so much, is that it purports, hey, here's a straightforward fix for your issue that gives people a sense of security and safety, which can be valuable. But the placebo effect can be valuable too. So if you guys agree, disagree, if you have other questions or comments about this sort of topic, let me know. But again, it's something that I'm pretty passionate about, because over the past year dealing with my own weird injury, I fell victim to a lot of this myself, and I'm a little bit bitter about it. And so I wanted to share with you for that reason. So on a somewhat unrelated note, I'm pretty happy with how this lecture went. I would love to know what you guys think. If you would like to read more about my approach to corrective exercise, I have a link to a blog post that I wrote a couple months ago that I think is a pretty good one. It might be worth reading. I do think I'm a better writer than speaker, but most people like YouTube videos, so I'm going to try and do those as well. If you would like to support me, I have some links below, and I would love it if you could share and subscribe. That's all I got for you guys. Have a great day, and I will talk to you soon.